Tohoku isn't really on the international traveler's map. We visited in January 2026 for 3 weeks as part of the second leg of our 12-week trip in Japan. There wasn't an overwhelming amount of tourists. I would say it is even slightly under-touristed. That is a good thing because it means there's some headroom before it becomes untenable as a destination. Overall, I really liked it. It was probably the best trip to Japan I have had in a while. We spent 3 weeks traveling through Sendai, Yamagata, Ichinoseki, Kitakami, and Morioka. Tohoku reminded me of Japan when I first visited the country, maybe 15 years ago. Some parts of it felt really nostalgic, like it was still in the early 2000s. In several cities, the architecture was very much like the buildings built in the 1980s, a sort of utilitarian brutalist style with tiled cladding. It felt old, but in a familiar way. Sort of like patina on a piece of treasured jewelry. That feeling was probably strongest in Morioka. It still has the Japan bubble era aesthetic, except it's showing its age these days. There's a bit of a grungy, almost industrial feel to it. The buildings, the narrow streets, and the underpasses tiled from floor to ceiling. When I was young, those types of underpasses were pretty common where I lived, in exactly the same aesthetic. We don't have those anymore. There were also the department stores. They weren't flashy like the modern steel and glass ones, but simple, brutalist buildings. At the peak of Japan's economic miracle, we had buildings like these all over the country, built by the likes of Takashimaya and Isetan. I don't see those around anymore either. In fact, even in Tokyo and the other major cities, you don't really see that aesthetic anymore. It was nostalgic. Realistically, Morioka probably would have been my least favorite city without that nostalgia. There is a reason this architecture is not popular anymore, but I think I still would have liked Tohoku. Yamagata was a really nice city surrounded by mountains. It did not really feel like a city. Perhaps it felt more like a large town. I really enjoyed the seamlessness with which, when driving around, it transitioned from urban to suburban to rural. The ski slopes were also 30 minutes away, which was great. I drove up to the slopes every morning. It was a nice break coming from Hokkaido the previous week, where I had a commute of more than an hour to the slopes every day. I really enjoyed the drive back. Coming down from the mountains, the views were amazing, and then you seamlessly transitioned into the urban area. There wasn't really much urban sprawl. Even the city center wasn't made up of skyscrapers, but rather historical heritage buildings. It blended very well into the beautiful nature surrounding the city on all sides. I think it's an amazing quality of life. Ichinoseki was very much a rural town, pretty standard as Japanese towns go. It had surprisingly good walking infrastructure and paved streets, perhaps because of the nearby UNESCO sites and temples. One thing I did notice on this trip was that I spent a lot more time in shrines and temples. Typically, I am not a huge fan of temples, but the temples in Tohoku were somehow more integrated with nature. Around Sendai, there were the temples of Matsushima Bay, facing the ocean. In Yamagata, there was Yamadera, built into the mountains. Near Ichinoseki, there was Chusonji, built into a pine forest. At places like these, you can understand why people in the past believed that nature spirits lived there. Yamadera and Chusonji did not feel like Sensoji or Meiji Jingu in Tokyo, which to me feel more like tourist attractions. For a temple in the middle of Tokyo, you cognitively understand why it came to be, but you do not experience it physically and emotionally. At a temple in the middle of nature, you get a glimpse of what it might have been like when the site was first established. By walking up the temple route at Yamadera or Chusonji, you put yourself in the shoes of pilgrims from the past. You see, hear, and feel what a person of that time would have experienced. You understand on a deeper level, beyond the purely intellectual, why these places brought succor and comfort to people in the past, and to some extent still do today. Studies have shown that walking in a forest or in nature creates some sort of psychological or chemical reaction in the brain. I think urbanization has gradually made us forget this feeling. What little nature we retain in our cities still lacks the ancient grandeur of these places. Overall, I think tourism in Tohoku can be considered incidental rather than intentional, at least to some extent. That's the kind of travel I enjoy. Matsushima struck a good balance. It was quite touristy, but well spread out, and they basically forced tourists to walk around, so that spread out the crowds. Yamagata didn't have many tourists, and that enhanced the mountainous atmosphere. Kitakami and Morioka were pretty much ski destinations in winter. Ski resorts tend to be crowded anyway, but the ones there were still quite acceptable. Tohoku could certainly develop more independent shops. Japanese domestic tourism is very resort-oriented, but I think there's more independent travel now. Maybe there could be more local support for smaller attractions that are struggling, just to ensure they remain open. We visited a glass museum or factory somewhere near Rairaikyo Gorge, but it was closed for winter. It would have been nice if it had been open. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'd like anything to change. It's like the highway problem. Add more lanes to the highway and you just create more congestion. Tohoku is a small 2-lane road, and that's its charm. I wouldn't want to see it become like Hokkaido or worse, Osaka or Kyoto. The problem is that small businesses and attractions still need enough customers to survive. It is a difficult balance to strike. You could promote independent tourism, which tends to support small businesses more than larger facilities, but many destinations have tried and failed. I would much rather Tohoku stay the way it is. Major tourism hotspots fall too easily into the trap of gentrification. Tourism that occurs incidentally, as it does in Tohoku, rather than being intentionally promoted, gives you a much more genuine experience. I think that a genuine experience is difficult to find in mature tourist destinations. Most people also aren't really looking for it. They might say they are, but then they decide to go to places like Bali or Phuket or Venice or Kyoto. Actions speak louder than words. Fundamentally, I think it requires a genuine curiosity about the place you visit. Despite traveling to Japan regularly for years, Tohoku was one of 3 regions I had never visited, the other 2 being Chugoku and Shikoku. It is easy to keep visiting Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya, and the usual places. But a traveler who is genuinely interested looks at the map and asks, I wonder what is over here. Then you research it and visit. To some extent, you also need to really like the country, and the country needs enough variability between regions to spark that curiosity. I have visited at least half of Thailand. Despite it being very convenient, I do not have much desire to visit the other half, because I feel that even without visiting it, I roughly know what it will be like. There is not enough variability for me. It is similar with the Maldives. I have been there about 4 times, but I am not curious about the other islands because the Maldives is such a highly curated resort experience. I cannot really say that I like the country or the people there, simply because I have never actually truly encountered either. There are levels to this. Tohoku is a big place. You look at the map and ask yourself, I wonder what's over here. So you choose the destination and you choose where to go. I think half the fun in traveling is planning out the itinerary, at least for me. There's a huge swath of Tohoku that I still haven't seen, particularly the areas bordering Kanto and the far north. I plan to visit the southern parts this winter. Tohoku offers a genuine experience. Generally, I find that popular tourist destinations tend to have the tourism subculture take over everything in the area. Take Kobe. It's a beautiful town, but people flock there for Kobe beef, so the entire boulevard is filled with beef skewer stalls. Do the locals eat Kobe beef every day? Obviously not. Are there local delicacies? Surely there are. But they've all been sidelined due to tourism. When the tourist dollar exceeds the local dollar, what you experience in a place is what tourists want, and not what the place truly is. It becomes a reductionist version of the real version of the place. It's like diving in the ocean versus visiting an aquarium. For me personally, I don't enjoy traveling all this way just to see a caricature, so I hope Tohoku never becomes mainstream.